Ava Cole had always been known as the steady one, the kind of person who showed up early, stayed late, and made sure everyone else was okay before she ever asked herself the same question. Growing up in a small, close-knit family, Ava learned quickly that being dependable wasn't just a trait, it was an expectation. Her younger sister, Talia, had been labeled the free spirit from the moment she learned to walk, and the family treated that title like permission to let her drift, stumble, and sometimes fall flat on her face. Ava, on the other hand, became the soft place everyone landed. "You don't mind, do you, Ava?" her mother would often say with a tired smile, already knowing the answer. Ava would shake her head, even when her chest felt tight, and reply, "Of course not. I've got it." That phrase followed her into adulthood like a shadow. One rainy afternoon, as Ava sat at her small kitchen table balancing her work laptop beside a half-cold cup of tea, her phone buzzed. Talia's name flashed across the screen. Ava hesitated, staring at it for a moment. "I should let it go to voicemail," she whispered to herself, but her finger betrayed her. "Hey, Talia," she answered. Talia's voice came fast and bright. "Avi, I need a huge favor. Just for tonight. Maybe the whole weekend. You're the only one I trust." Ava closed her eyes, already feeling the familiar pull of responsibility tugging at her heart. Talia's children, Rowan and Eli, had become part of Ava's daily rhythm without anyone ever really asking if Ava wanted that role. Rowan was 8, thoughtful and quiet, always carrying a book under his arm, while 6-year-old Eli was all energy, bouncing from couch to floor to window like a pinball. Ava loved them deeply, but love didn't erase exhaustion. One evening, as Ava was helping Rowan with his homework at her dining table, Eli tugged at her sleeve. "Aunt Ava, why is Mommy always busy?" he asked innocently. Ava paused, her pen hovering in the air. She smiled gently. "Your mom works hard, sweetheart. She just needs a little help sometimes." Rowan looked up from his math sheet. "But you help all the time," he said. "Who helps you?" Ava laughed softly, but the question landed heavier than either boy realized. Later that night, Ava called her friend Lena, who listened patiently as Ava vented. "You're not their parent," Lena said carefully. "You're allowed to have your own life." Ava sighed, staring out her window at the dim streetlights. "I know that in my head," she replied, "but my heart doesn't know how to say no." The words lingered in the quiet room long after the call ended. For the first time, Ava wondered what her life might look like if she stopped being the family's safety net and started being her own person. The moment of change didn't arrive with a dramatic argument or a slammed door. It came quietly on a Thursday morning when Ava's boss leaned over her desk and said, "We're considering you for the project lead, but we need to know you can commit fully." Ava's stomach fluttered with a mix of excitement and fear. That night, when Talia called again, her voice rushed and breathless, Ava felt something shift inside her. "I need you this weekend," Talia said. "Last-minute work thing. Please don't make this hard." Ava stared at her reflection in the dark screen of her TV. She looked tired, older than she should. "I can't, Talia," she said softly. There was a long pause on the other end. "What do you mean, you can't?" Talia snapped. "You always can." Ava swallowed. "Not this time. I have work. I have plans. I need this weekend for myself." Talia scoffed. "So, now you're too good for us?" Ava felt the familiar guilt rise, but she held her ground. "I'm not saying that," she replied. "I'm just saying no." When the call ended, Ava sat in silence, her heart pounding. For the first time, the word no didn't feel like betrayal. It felt like breath. The next day, Ava's phone exploded with messages from her mother, her aunt, even a cousin she barely spoke to. "Family helps family," one text read. Another said, "You're being selfish." Ava set her phone face down and focused on her work, her hands shaking as she typed. That evening, Lena came over with takeout and a determined look. "You're not wrong," Lena said firmly. "You're just uncomfortable because you've never chosen yourself before." Ava nodded slowly, tears slipping down her cheeks. "I don't want to lose them," she whispered. Lena squeezed her hand. Setting boundaries doesn't mean losing people. It means teaching them how to treat you. Ava repeated the words in her mind like a quiet prayer. Somewhere deep inside, a small but steady flame of confidence began to grow. She didn't know what the consequences of her choice would be, but for the first time, she felt like she was standing on her own feet instead of holding everyone else up. The consequences arrived in a way Ava never could have imagined. Late Saturday afternoon, her phone rang from an unknown number. "Is this Ava Cole?" a calm voice asked. "Yes," Ava replied cautiously. "This is Vanessa Hale," the woman continued. "I'm a social worker. 2 children were dropped off at my home in a taxi, with your name and number. They said you were supposed to be here." Ava's heart stopped. "What?" she whispered. Vanessa explained that Rowan and Eli had been sent to Ava's old address, a place she hadn't lived in for months. The police were involved, and they needed Ava to come down to the station. Ava's hands trembled as she grabbed her keys. At the station, Rowan ran into her arms, crying. "Mommy said you'd be here," he sobbed. Ava held him tightly, her chest aching with anger, fear, and heartbreak all at once. When Talia finally arrived, she looked defensive instead of apologetic. "I didn't have a choice," Talia said. Ava stepped back, her voice steady but cold. "You had a choice," she replied, "and you chose to put your kids in danger to punish me." In that moment, Ava realized something had changed forever. This wasn't just about boundaries anymore. This was about protecting herself and the children from a cycle that had gone on far too long. The police station smelled faintly of old coffee and disinfectant, and Ava felt like she was standing in a place where every sound echoed too loudly, even her own breathing. Rowan sat beside her, clutching her sleeve, while Eli leaned against her side, his small fingers tangled in the fabric of her jacket. A young officer crouched in front of them, his voice gentle. "Can you tell me who put you in the taxi?" he asked. Rowan looked at Ava before answering, as if seeking permission. "Mommy did," he said quietly. "She said Aunt Ava forgot we were coming, but she'd be happy to see us." Ava closed her eyes for a moment, steadying herself. Across the room, Talia paced, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. When the officer approached her, Talia's voice rose. "I was desperate," she insisted. "I had a job event. I can't just lose my job." Ava finally stood. "And they can't just be sent across the city alone," she said, her voice calm but unshakable. The room went still. Vanessa, the social worker, stepped in gently. "This isn't about blame right now," she said. "It's about safety." Ava nodded, grateful for the grounding presence. In that moment, she realized she wasn't just speaking for herself anymore. She was speaking for 2 small boys who didn't yet know how to protect themselves from the choices of the adults around them. Later that night, after the paperwork was done and the boys were finally settled on Ava's couch with blankets and warm cups of cocoa, Ava sat across from Talia at her kitchen table. The air between them felt thick, heavy with years of unspoken resentment and misplaced expectations. "You embarrass me," Talia said first, her voice low. Ava leaned forward. "You scared me," she replied. "You scared your kids." Talia looked away, her jaw tight. "You don't understand how hard my life is," she muttered. Ava took a deep breath. "I do understand," she said. "I've been holding it up for you for years." Silence filled the space. Rowan peeked around the corner, and Ava smiled softly at him, reassuring him with her eyes. Turning back to Talia, Ava continued, "I love them. I love you. But love doesn't mean I disappear, so you don't have to show up." Talia's eyes glistened, though she quickly wiped them away. "So, what, you're just done with us?" Ava shook her head. "No. I'm done being the only one who carries the weight." The words felt like a door closing and opening at the same time. The next morning, Ava took the boys to the park. The sky was bright and clear, and the laughter of children floated through the air like music. Rowan climbed slowly up the jungle gym, carefully testing each step, while Eli raced across the grass, his joy uncontainable. Ava sat on a bench, watching them, feeling a mix of protectiveness and quiet resolve settle into her chest. A woman beside her smiled. "They're lucky to have you," she said casually. Ava returned the smile, but shook her head gently. They're lucky to have people who care, she replied. For the first time, she didn't feel the familiar sting of being mistaken for their parent. She felt something else instead, pride in knowing she could care without losing herself. Her phone buzzed. A message from her boss lit up the screen. We're excited to move forward with you as project lead. Ava's breath caught. She looked up at Rowan and Eli, then back at the message, and felt a quiet, powerful sense of balance. Her life didn't have to be one or the other. It could be both as long as she chose it. That afternoon, Talia came by to pick up the boys. She stood awkwardly in the doorway, her hands fidgeting with the strap of her bag. I talked to Vanessa, she said. Ava raised an eyebrow. And Talia sighed. She didn't sugarcoat anything. Ava waited. She said, I've been leaning on you like a crutch instead of standing on my own. Talia's voice cracked slightly. I didn't like hearing it, but I think I needed to. Ava softened. I'm not your enemy, Talia, she said. I just don't want to be your escape. Rowan ran up and hugged Ava tightly. Thank you for today, he whispered. Eli followed suit, nearly knocking her over. Talia watched the moment, something shifting behind her eyes. I don't want them thinking you're the only one who shows up, she said quietly. Ava met her gaze. Then show up, she replied simply. It wasn't a challenge. It was an invitation. Weeks passed, and the rhythm of Ava's life began to change. Mornings were filled with meetings and planning sessions instead of frantic phone calls. Evenings were quieter, sometimes spent with Lena over dinner, sometimes alone with a book and soft music playing in the background. Talia still called, but now she asked instead of assumed. Are you free this Friday? She'd say. And sometimes Ava would answer yes. And sometimes she would say no. And both answers felt equally honest. One night, Lena raised her glass and smiled. To Ava, she said, the woman who finally learned that being kind doesn't mean being invisible. Ava laughed, a warm, genuine sound that felt lighter than it had in years. She realized she wasn't just building boundaries. She was building a life. The real test came when their mother called, her voice tinged with disappointment. Your sister is trying, she said. You could make it easier on her. Ava closed her eyes, choosing her words carefully. I am making it easier, she replied, by not doing it for her. There was a long pause. I raised you to be helpful, her mother said. Ava smiled sadly. You raised me to be strong, she corrected gently. I'm just finally using it for myself too. When the call ended, Ava felt a familiar ache, but it didn't hollow her out like it used to. It felt like a growing pain, the kind that meant something new was taking shape. One afternoon, Rowan asked a question that caught Ava off guard. Do you think Mommy is proud of you? He asked, swinging his legs as he sat on Ava's kitchen counter. Ava blinked. Why would you ask that? Rowan shrugged. Because you do a lot of things that make people happy. Ava knelt in front of him. Rowan, she said softly, the most important thing is that I'm proud of me. The boy considered this, then nodded slowly, as if storing the idea away for later. Ava stood, her heart swelling. Maybe the greatest thing she could teach them wasn't how to always help others, but how to value themselves. Months later, Ava stood in a conference room, presenting her project to a room full of executives. Her voice was steady. Her posture was confident. As applause filled the room, she caught her reflection in the glass wall and barely recognized the woman she used to be, the one who shrank herself to fit into everyone else's needs. That evening, she celebrated with Lena and, unexpectedly, Talia, who showed up with a small bouquet of flowers. For the project lead, Talia said, smiling shyly. Ava accepted them, surprised. Thank you, she replied. It wasn't a grand reconciliation, but it was something real, something earned. Later that night, Ava sat on her balcony, the city lights twinkling like distant stars. She thought about the little girl she had been, the one who learned early that love meant sacrifice. She wished she could go back and whisper something in that girl's ear. Love can also mean standing still when everyone else expects you to run. Her phone buzzed with a message from Talia. I signed up for parenting class today. Ava smiled to herself, a quiet, hopeful smile that felt like sunrise. Ava's life didn't transform into a perfect story where every problem vanished and every relationship healed overnight. But it became something better, something honest. She still loved her family. She still helped when she could, but she no longer disappeared in the process. One evening, as Rowan and Eli waved goodbye from their mother's car, Ava turned back toward her apartment, her steps light, her heart steady. She unlocked her door, stepped inside, and felt something settle gently into place. She wasn't the backup plan anymore. She was the main character in her own life. And for the first time, that felt like more than enough. Life didn't slow down just because Ava had finally learned how to breathe inside her own skin. The days kept moving, filled with deadlines, meetings, and the soft hum of responsibility that came with leading a team instead of quietly supporting one. One afternoon, as she walked through the office hallway with a stack of reports pressed against her chest, a coworker smiled and said, "You've changed. You walk like you know where you're going now." Ava laughed, surprised by how true it felt. That evening, she found herself sitting across from Talia at a small cafe near the park, steam rising from their mugs. Talia stirred her coffee nervously. "I messed up a lot," she admitted. Ava listened, not interrupting, not fixing. Just listening. Talia looked up. "You're not jumping in to tell me what to do." Ava smiled softly. "That's because you're learning to tell yourself." The words felt gentle, not sharp. For the first time, their conversation didn't feel like a tug-of-war. It felt like two sisters meeting in the middle. Rowan and Eli began to notice the difference too. One Saturday, when Talia dropped them off for a planned visit, Rowan handed Ava a folded piece of paper. Inside was a crayon drawing of 3 stick figures holding hands. Above them, in shaky letters, were the words, "We help each other." Ava swallowed hard. "That's beautiful," she whispered. Eli grinned. "Mommy said she helps now too," he announced proudly. Ava glanced at Talia, who stood in the doorway, hands tucked into her jacket pockets. Their eyes met, and in that brief moment, Ava saw something that hadn't been there before: effort. Not perfection. Not transformation. Just effort. And for once, that felt like enough to keep hope alive without asking Ava to carry it alone. One night, Ava called her mother, her voice calm instead of cautious. They talked about small things, the weather, a neighbor's new dog, a recipe that never quite turned out right. Then her mother sighed. "I didn't realize how much we leaned on you," she said quietly. Ava closed her eyes, letting the words settle. "I didn't realize how much I let you," she replied. There was no anger in it, just truth. Her mother paused, then said softly, "I'm proud of you." The words were simple, but they landed like a gift Ava hadn't known she'd been waiting for. After the call, Ava stood by her window, watching the city glow in the dark, and felt a sense of peace that didn't depend on anyone else's approval. Months later, Ava hosted a small dinner in her apartment. The table was crowded with mismatched plates, laughter, and the warmth of people who chose to be there. Lena told a story that made everyone laugh until their sides hurt. Rowan showed off a school project. Eli spilled his drink and immediately rushed to clean it up himself, declaring, "I got it." Ava watched it all unfold, her heart full in a quiet, steady way. She realized that this was what balance looked like, not a perfect scale, but a living, breathing moment where everyone carried a little of the weight and no one disappeared under it. Later that night, after the door closed behind the last guest and the apartment fell into a peaceful hush, Ava sat on her couch with the soft glow of a lamp lighting the room. She thought about the long road that had brought her here, the years of being the fallback, the safety net, the quiet yes in a world full of demands. She smiled, not with pride alone, but with gratitude for the woman she had become through the choosing, the stumbling, and the standing still when it mattered most. Ava didn't have a perfect family. She didn't have a perfect life. But she had something stronger. She had a voice, a place to stand, and the courage to stay there. And as she turned off the light and headed to bed, she carried with her the quiet certainty that her story, her real story, was one she was finally writing for herself.